Friends, welcome, welcome. I'm Joe Fortune and I'm proud to be the General Secretary of the Co-operative Party. Whilst I can't see you all in person today, I know there are many friends and fantastic co-operators joining us right across all the regions with us. Welcome to the Own in the Future Northern Conference. Welcome to members and supporters from the North East, North West and Yorks and the Humber regions. Thank you for making some time to be with us today. And also thank you for being with us through some of the most challenging times. Whilst we can see some light at the end of the tunnel, we know there are many challenges still ahead of us. Your support and commitment through these times have helped the Cooperative Party and the Cooperative Movement immeasurably. I want to start by recognising our efforts of the efforts of our party officers and our NEC members around the regions today. You've kept our local structures vibrant and engaged. The way you've moved our activity online and made it more accessible has been fantastic. I also want to record my thanks to our elected representatives at all levels of government. You've made sure that there's a strong cooperative voice when it has been needed most. And also, I must highlight the fantastic start that our new regional organisers have made. They are working to support your efforts, and we really look forward to seeing this work develop. What we do in the party is a team effort, and everyone is an important part of that team. Today, we have a fantastic programme ahead of us. I'm very much looking forward to listening in through the day, being in and out of the different sessions that we have ahead of us. This conference is a conference of two halves. For the first part of the conference, we're on the live stream on the website. We'll be hearing from Angela Rayner, the Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, and Chantal, our party's new Equalities Officer. Following that, we'll have the opportunity to take part in two policy debates on social care and the future of our high streets and town centres. These two debates form part of our member-led policy process for 2021. It's great that we have the sessions on the programme, as I really believe that these are areas ripe for renewed cooperative endeavour, areas which will really reveal our ambitions for our communities around the country. Make sure you contribute to these debates and get your questions into the speakers using the Slido chat box on the screen. And make sure you're following and using the hashtag CoopRegional21. The chat box is monitored by the team, and your questions and contributions will be passed to the chair of those sessions. Following a short break, we'll reconvene on Zoom for the second part of the conference in your regions. These sessions will focus on campaigning in your areas and the build up to the upcoming local elections. If you've got any problems logging onto those sessions, make sure you're emailing at events@party.coop. If you've got any issues at all, the team will be there ready to help. All of the content today and everything you see from the party is focused in and around what we're trying to achieve. We in the party are ambitious for ourselves in the party, but also ambitious for our cooperative movement. Friends, we must play a leadership role in both social movements that we straddle, the Labour movement and the cooperative movement. In recent times, I believe we've got a really strong record to look back on. We've become a leading part and campaigning organisation within our movements, and one in which many others look towards as well. 2020 has showed this ambition and this work. Nearly 20,000 new supporters have joined our cause. We've enjoyed the biggest single year for the membership increase in our history. With tens of thousands of people who have joined our campaign and work last year, we've really made our movement's views known on issues such as fair tax, fair trade, retail worker violence, and food justice as well. We've been a key ally for our movement through the pandemic, supporting their efforts to keep food on the table, provide schooling and early years provision, as well as provide end-of-life care and so much more besides. We are also ambitious for our party's work and operation. I've been proud how we've moved online and we've developed new training, resources and support right across the plethora of party endeavour. It's been a real team effort and I've been really proud to see its development over the last year and a half. When we look forward to the local elections, I must thank you all for the preparations you've already helped us make. 100% of voters in Yorkshire and the Humber, Greater Manchester and Merseyside in the North East will have a Cooperative Party candidate to vote for this May. Where we're off to is nearly 90% of the population right across the country having the opportunity to vote for a cooperative candidate. This takes us away from our previous high of maybe 3 million people having a cooperative candidate to support in the 2017 general election to tens of millions of people for the first time seeing cooperative candidates on the ballot paper ready to support. We're in a great position going into these elections in the regions here today as well. We've got over 200 co-op council candidates standing across these three regions today, and they're growing. That number is growing day on day. We've got 10 police and crime commissioner candidates standing jointly as Labour and Co-operative. In fact, across the country, there's only a very small number of police and crime commissioner candidates who aren't flying our banner as well. We also have a Labour and Co-operative mayoral candidate in each region today is represented. We've got Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester, and both Tracy Brabham in West Yorkshire and Jessie Jo Jacobs in Tees Valley as well, both of whom set to make history as being the first women to become Metro mayors in our country. We've carried out new candidate training and provided new digital materials. We've developed new joint election materials with the Labour Party, and we've begun our Co-operative Party telephone canvassing sessions as well. I'm proud about our work to this date, but I'm looking forward to seeing it flourish over the coming weeks ahead of May as well. These are really crucial elections, and we're really going to have to work to make sure we support all of our co-operative candidates. These aren't just crucial elections for ourselves in the party and the co-operative movement, but they're also crucial elections for our friends, families, and the communities we live in. In recent times, we've seen our communities ripped asunder, unprecedented challenge to the status quo, and the need for a new settlement like never before. The power of politics to make positive and negative change to people's lives has been brought into absolute sharp relief. We know that our values and principles provide a better way. They provide hope in a better future. That's why we must do what we can to strengthen the voice and the clout of our party and our movement, and make sure that cooperative message is heard like never before. Friends, I look forward to the conference. I look forward to working with you into the future as well. Now, it's my great pleasure to hand over to hear from our first speaker, our first keynote speaker from today, to a fantastic friend of the Co-operative Party and a fantastic advocate for our values and principles. Angela, it's great to have you with us here today. So without further ado, it's over to yourself. The floor's all yours. Thanks for being here, Angela.
Oh, Joe, thank you so much. And it is so good to be here and to be speaking to you today. I'm just so sorry that I can't meet people in person yet, but if this government doesn't mess it up and don't give it to their private mates who they're friendly with in WhatsApp groups, and actually allow the NHS, the commissioning group and the local councils to continue with their fantastic programme of rolling out the vaccine, then hopefully we'll all be able to see each other very soon, and hopefully in the summer as well. And these elections are incredibly important because people need to see the difference that it makes. And doesn't it make a difference? And haven't we seen that in the way that bumbling Boris has just bounced from one thing to another, being pushed by his most ardent right-wing and libertarians in his party at the cost of making us one of the highest, well, the highest death rates in Europe and one of the highest death rates in the world. And really as well, the economic difficulty and challenges we face now because of the way in which the government have handled this global pandemic is disgraceful. And when they came to Greater Manchester and told us in Greater Manchester that we were 67% of furlough than what they were giving the rest of the country because it was Greater Manchester going into lockdown, it was our Labour mayor that stood up against that and said, we're not having it. That's not the way we do things. And I'm so proud of our Labour councils who have been out there making sure that our kids don't go hungry. And, you know, I just want to share, I mean, people know my background. I think a lot of the people on this call will know my background. And I came from a very poor upbringing. And the reason why I get quite emotional about the situation, and Marcus Rashford, the Premiership footballer, was Withenshaw, is where my mum grew up. He's one of our Manchester lads. And the reason I get so emotional about this issue, and I've been so vocal about it, is because when I was growing up, I used to go around my mates' houses and ask my mates, will you ask your mum and dad if I can stay for dinner? Because I knew it's the only way I was going to be able to get some food, and I was hungry. And they'd go in and ask, and they'd come out and they'd say, sorry, my mum says she can't stay today because she came yesterday, so you have to go home for your dinner. And I'd sit out on the curb whilst my mate has their dinner, I would sit out on the curb, hungry, sat there waiting for them to come back out so we can play again. When the Tories decided that that wasn't a priority for them, it was our Labour councils, it was our movement that stepped up and made sure that no kid had to sit on the curb during the holidays and during this pandemic and not get fed. And that in itself, for me, is more than enough to get me fired up for these local elections and for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections and the other mayoral elections and other elections we've got. It's so crucial. And, you know, I'm dead proud because I think Sean Fielding, Councillor Sean Fielding, leader of Oldham Council, is going to be speaking at this event at some point, and I'm dead proud of him. He's a really, really good advocate for Oldham. And we've got Jim McMahon, who's also my fellow MP and my constituent, by the way, who's the chair of the Co-op movement. And I'm really proud of the relationship between the Labour Party and the Cooperative Party and the wider cooperative movement. I've always been that. Joe knows that. Joe knows my background. He knows that I've been an advocate of it ever since I was born and bred in Stockport and we had our first cooperative school. And as Shadow Education Secretary, I pushed really hard to get cooperative schools because I saw we had a farm and it was such an amazing school. And I saw that, you know, the energy and the values that the Cooperative Party brings to the Labour Party and the innovation and the way in which we can look at how we work in mutuals and work together in communities is so inspiring. And, you know, the relationship between the two parties are nearly 100 years old. Obviously not me and Joe, because we're not a day past. We're still youth as far as we're concerned. That's why we're in the movement, because it makes us feel young. But, you know, I mean, I'm a grandma now. I started as a young member and now I'm a grandma and been knitting my way through this lockdown. But, you know, it is the two parties have been together for nearly 100 years. And Rochdale, where the pioneers founded the Cooperative Party movement, the first ever modern cooperative is just down the road from my constituency, so I'm really pleased about that. And you know, the event today is themed Owning the Future, and it's the cooperative solutions and values that will be the foundation of our recovery from this pandemic. So we won't be going back to business as usual, but we will go forward to a more prosperous and fair and more secure future. Absolutely believe in that, working together. And, you know, throughout this crisis, we've seen cooperative principles in action in every village, town and city through mutual aid networks and communities and coming together to support each other. And paying our care workers and key workers a wage that they can live on, ensuring that our high streets are the beating heart of our communities once again, and making sure that no child goes hungry in the 5th richest country in the world. These are the issues that I'm passionate about, and they're the issues that I know you're focusing on as well. You know, so for example, the care workers campaign we've been working on. If you pay a care worker at least £10 an hour, that's an extra £50 a week compared to their wage today. So they can pay their bills and they can feed their kids. And they ain't going to stash 50 quid away in a tax haven offshore. They're going to spend it in local shops and in their local economy. So their high street benefits, their local economy benefits, local businesses benefit, and workers working in the local economy benefit. It's an absolute win all round. And that's what Keir Starmer set out in his speech on the economy last week. We can have a prosperous economy and a fairer economy. In fact, we can only have one with the other. We can't have a prosperous economy with the kids at food banks and 4 million children growing up in poverty and 3 and 4 care workers earning less than the living wage. And you know, I want to pay tribute to the Co-op Party for your candidate development programme. We need our elected representatives to reflect and represent the communities they serve. We will not get into government unless that is the case. We need more women. We need more ethnic minority LGBT plus candidates to run for office. And we need to reflect the working class in all of its diversity. And I want to pledge to you that you have my full support in making sure that that programme is a huge success, because without it, we will not succeed in getting into government. Now, there's less than 10 weeks to go until the elections in May, 10 weeks. We need our whole movement to be speaking to voters and getting voters signed up for early votes. So my first ask of you today is, if you're not on a postal vote, why not? Have you not heard me banging on about it? I've sent you loads of emails. So that's my first message. Please get on a postal vote. I know that a lot of us have always got used to being in polling stations on the day, but you know, we don't want as much traffic on the day in our polling stations, because the staff have got a job to do, you know, with COVID safety, etc. already. If we can help them out by getting a postal vote, we should. That's the first thing. And if you were self-isolating, then that could be a challenge. So please get on a postal vote, please. It's dead easy, just do it. I've been banging on about it. Go on my Twitter feed. Well, don't actually, it's full of bile as well. Don't read below the line, I don't. Just read what I've put. Everything else is not true. So but click on the link and follow the instructions and get yourself a postal vote. And then my second ask is, ask 5 of your friends or family to do the same. Because if we can do that today, through the co-op movement now, you will get our co-op and Labour councillors and candidates like Tracy Brabin, as Joe said, and our other fantastic candidates you've got. You can make the difference. So what are you waiting for? Because otherwise you're putting the kids on the curb, remember? I want you to think about that. I know you can do this. I know that some of your friends and family can be a bit of a nightmare, but even they've seen through Boris Johnson now. I'm sorry. There's no way any of them are going to turn around and have an excuse to why they're not going to go Labour. And therefore, please get them to do a postal vote. It's so important that we're able to do that. And I want every single person on this call to take action to join a phone bank as well. Like, we've got dialogue now, which is, you know, we've extended dialogue, so it's got better capacity. And we used to only have one crap song that you had to listen to before you were connected to a call. Now I've improved it. You've got 5 rubbish songs to listen to first. You're so lucky. So please, please, please get involved. You know, go on a phone bank, at least one. Come on, we can do this. We've got to do it for our candidates. They need it. And these elections are our opportunity to deliver Labour and cooperative councillors who will protect our communities from the worst of the Tories. You've got to remember that. And our Labour and co-op councillors will ensure our recovery is based on cooperative values. That's what's at stake here. Looking after each other, supporting each other, and sharing the proceeds of our wealth and our growth. So this year, I want to finish on this note. This year, we have seen the spirit of our movement in our communities. People have come together. They've looked after each other. We all know our neighbours more now than we've probably ever known them before. We've clapped for our key workers. We've supported each other. Now, let's push forward in making sure we get as many Labour and cooperative candidates elected in May, so that we can do justice to those people that have supported us through the difficult time by putting our values into action and making their lives better. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much, Angela, for that. And I absolutely agree that we are definitely still young. However, I can't agree with you that the family are nightmares at times. I've had a text message. My mum and dad are joining the call from the Northwest, so I couldn't possibly say that here and now today. But other than that, thank you very much. Look, I know that you've got to carry on and spread that message in terms of the postal voting and other things today. But thank you very, very much for joining us here today. Angela, you highlighted that we're less than 10 weeks to go, and you made sure that we all were aware of what's at stake in 10 weeks' time. So I know that we'll be doing as much we can in the Co-operative Party to be part and parcel of what we hope will be a great and successful set of elections in May. So thank you for that. And look, on that point of increasing our opportunities, but also ensuring that we are more reflective of the communities that we serve, I'm really delighted to be able to introduce our party's new Equalities officer, Chantal Lee. Chantal has joined us over the last 2-3 months, but it feels like you've been here with us, Chantal, for much longer. You've had a fantastic input or an impact already into the operation and the work of our party. But Chantal, it's fantastic, and I'm going to hand over to yourself now to introduce yourself, the role, and all the work as well. Chantal. Chantal ever so slightly seems to have become unusually shy. That is not, I can see that she has come back from under her pillow. I gave a huge build up, but that is by no means wasted, because Chantal, you are back with us. You're back on the call. Connection issues are back, so that's fantastic. So over to yourself, Chantal.
Thank you, and apologies for that interruption. To ensure that you are able to hear what I've got to say, I'm going to turn off my video. So hello, to enable you to put a face to a name, but I want to make sure that you can hear what I've got to say. So as I'm sure Joe has introduced, I am the new Equalities Officer for the Co-operative Party. I'm so honoured to be able to work in this new and exciting role, because it really gives me a chance to highlight everything that the party is doing to work towards a fairer society. We know that so much has to be done to address the inequalities within our society. And as a party, we are, and we will continue to make great strides in this area. In terms of our progress on equality, so many of the things that we appreciate and take for granted today were really pushed forward by the cooperative movement and by our party. And today we're proud of things such as our gender balanced NEC, having a BAME NEC observer, having a youth member of our NEC, ensuring that all of our Zooms and events like today enable closed captioning and are as accessible as possible. But we aren't complacent, and we know that we want to go further and do much more, which includes setting up an Equalities Advisory Committee, holding more events with our diversity networks, supporting and training diverse candidates to seek selection, and ensuring that our party looks like the communities we serve. I know that you will share our vision of a fairer and more equal society, and I look forward to meeting lots of you on our equalities journey. But before I let you go and enjoy the rest of your conference, I want to ask, and I know Angela's already asked for everyone to do a phone bank, so there's lots of asks of everyone today, but if you do get 2 minutes of your time today, please do log in to your membership on our website and make sure that your equalities data is up to date, because we know what we want to do and we know how to get there. But if we already know the communities that we have in our party and the diversity that we already serve, we can be in a better position to build on that and to develop. And without the data on our membership, it's much harder to do that. So please do make sure that we do know about who we have in our party. That was very short but sweet. I hope you could hear me, because I can't see or hear anything. But Joe's smiling, so I'm gonna hand back to him.
Thank you very much for that, Chantal. And it cannot be easy to speak into the ether, but Chantal, you came across loud and clear, so really appreciate that contribution. Friends, we are moving forward to our first policy debate and panel today. This one will be looking at social care and the ability for cooperative and mutual solutions within that area. I'm really pleased to be able to hand over to Anna Burley, who's our policy officer. Anna, over to you. We're in safe hands. I can see you there.
Hi everybody, and thank you so much for having me. It is a pleasure to come north, having spent my morning virtually in the Isle of Wight and Reading. So I am doing a proper tour of the country, and this is the first of our policy debates today. So a quick introduction to why we have policy debates and why we've got the topics that we have on the agenda today. Our party policy, our platform sets the agenda for our party and its representatives, and it puts forward our to-do list in Parliament, in the Welsh Senate, in the Scottish Parliament, in town halls across the country. And in the tradition of cooperation, it's a member-led process. So for something to become our policy, we have a process whereby everybody discusses and debates the topics, puts forward their ideas and contributions, They're reviewed by our National Executive Committee, and then in October we've got the chance to debate some policy and vote on it. So as part of that, we want to make sure that you're informed, that we're learning from the co-op movement and really drawing on the best practice of our representatives and cooperators everywhere. So today we have 2 panel discussions. You can then take away what you've learned, maybe discuss with your local branch, get involved in your Equalities network, or make a submission as an individual. And the 2 topics are social care and high streets. One was chosen by our policy subcommittee, social care, and the other, hopefully some of you remember and took part before Christmas. We had a vote on the second topic, and you wanted to discuss high streets, which I'm thrilled about because it's a really, really exciting and timely topic. So first up, social care. I'll stop blaring on because we've got some real experts on the call today. I'm really excited to introduce Sharon Lowry from Be Caring. I've got Graham Mitchell, who's the chair of the Cooperative Care in Colne Valley. And I have Councillor Joanne Harding, who's executive member for adult social care in Trafford. I'm going to ask my colleague Izzy if we can pin everybody so that you can see all of our faces. So I've got Joanne, Sharon, and last but I'm sure by no means least, Graham. There we go. So hopefully those of you watching us from home can see all of us, and it's much more interesting to get involved in. So our discussion about social care looks, I guess, a bit about the fact that it's reached a breaking point. I think COVID has highlighted that it isn't a system that's fit for purpose, and that actually that's been to the huge detriment of many care home residents and care home staff who just haven't been kept safe through this crisis. So we're at a point where there's, I think, a lot of acknowledgement in the need to reform, but sort of beyond throwing money at a problem, we actually think that there are structural problems with the way that the system ran even before this crisis, with issues around low pay, very little say in your workplace, a feeling of powerlessness, both from workers and people being cared for and their families, and sort of an awful lot of profit leaving the system in tatters. And happily, much better ways of doing things already happening that we should learn from and hopefully understand the support that's required to help the cooperative care sector grow. So I am going to hand over to my real experts. Sharon, if it's all right, I'm going to pick on you first. If you could tell us a little bit about who Be Caring is and the kind of work that you do and why you think that it's sort of an important difference to the traditional models of care. And I think you'll need to unmute. Lovely, there we go.
I have got a bit of a presentation, Anna, or shall I just talk?
By all means, share your presentation, that would be great. Do you got the ability to share your screen?
Oh, I have, yes. Lovely.
Lovely, perfect. Then you crack on.
Right, I'm hoping you can see this. So thank you so much for inviting me to speak today. It's a great opportunity to get involved in this type of discussion. So I'm Sharon, been the Chief Exec for Be Caring for the last 3 years, 1st of April actually. So I'll just run through you a few slides. I think I've got about 5 or 6 minutes and hopefully start to inform some good discussion. Bear with me. So a bit about Be Caring. We are the UK's largest employee-owned provider of social care services in people's homes. So that's mainly predominantly domiciliary care. We operate in Newcastle, Manchester, Liverpool and Leeds. And I think it's only fair to point out we work in some of the most deprived communities. We heard Angela talk about Wythenshawe. Our delivery is in the heart of Wythenshawe, and the people we look after are vulnerable. But a lot of our carers, really need that support. There's so many issues that affect their lives, and so Be Caring really wants it to be at the heart of communities, really supporting carers and supporting them to deliver the best quality care. We are a social enterprise. All of our colleagues are co-owners of the business. There's no external shareholders. There isn't any, I'm an equal stakeholder in this business, as all of our colleagues are. Every single one of our 800 carers have an equal say in how we run the business. sorry, I'll carry on a little bit. What it does mean to be a colleague at Be Caring is that you do get a say, and it's not just about having a share in the profits, which we have made this year actually. I'm accountable. I'm part of a board, but I am accountable to what we call as Voice. So Voice is made up of members from across all of our services. They see everything. They see the financials, the performance, the quality data. They have a real say in how the business is run. Any key decisions are run through our Voice. We've got our board meeting a week on Wednesday, is where we set our annual budget. All of our Voice members are there. Our managers are there from our service. The executive and the non-executive directors are there. So it's a really inclusive way of running a business. We became Be Caring in January 2019, but we were formerly known as CASA. I joined when we were in a little bit of difficulty, both from a financial perspective and a quality. It was touch and go that first year, but actually we've put a lot of effort into turning this business around. So we made some really difficult decisions to pull out of 3 areas. But we deliver more care now. We've got a greater turnover in terms of income. All of our services are rated good. There's some statistics there. We make over 980,000 visits a year. We deliver 1 million hours of care a year. We've got 800 colleagues delivering care across the north of England. When I joined, we'd never made a penny. And the reason I sort of pull this out is because sometimes it's not just about the model. You've got to have the right level of business acumen to make the decisions, negotiate the contracts, know where to work. And it's difficult in this sector. It really is. I'm delighted to say in December, we paid our first ever employee bonus. So that was a share. Every full-time colleague received £250. And I know you can imagine what that must mean to a care worker. And we paid that just before Christmas. So hopefully, it was a nice reward for all the significant work that they've done through COVID. What I have done is I brought in expertise from outside of the sector. I cannot begin to stress how underdeveloped this sector is, because it's so underfunded, and that there's a huge opportunity here to transform it. I cannot stress that enough. I think where my belief is that that the home care is predominantly female. They're undervalued and they are underpaid. And obviously Angela talked about this campaign for £10 an hour. That's all well and good, but actually what we've got to be focusing on is getting the basics right. We need to give this workforce a salary. We need to pay them for the full time they're out at work. We've got to stop this minute by minute commissioning. We've got to pay people in shifts. So that's going to be our big campaign. And I'd love to see a salaried workforce, and then we empower them to make a difference in the communities that they're in. Let's focus on tackling reducing social isolation, people's well-being. Can we work across the health and social care sector and look at admission avoidance, look at the demand that we've got on our primary care. So that's my big plea. Can we stop this? Can we stop this way of commissioning, which means that a carer doesn't get paid if one of their clients goes into hospital? They don't get paid if somebody passes away and they're waiting for the next person to look after. They don't get paid if a client cancels. So we've almost got to lift the lid on how it's commissioned and what the true cost of delivering care safely in people's homes is. So that is my big plea. Please, can we get the commissioning right and really value this workforce? And I think what that will do, it will unleash capacity, which will make such a difference and will make savings across the system as a whole. So there you go. That's my view.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And I think you're absolutely right. It's about paying people properly, but also valuing their time properly, and that travel between appointments and sort of the security that you get from knowing that you've got a job is so critical, and a real problem in care where there's a race to the bottom on price. So I am going to hand over next to Graham from Colne Valley. If you could tell us a little bit about what you're up to, Graham, and sort of your pitch for the sector, as it were, and then Joanne will get a local government perspective as well, because where it's about sort of commissioning and the relationship with communities, I think that's critical. So Graham, over to you.
Brilliant, thanks, Anna. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so I'd echo everything I think that Sharon just said very eloquently about the need for adequate funding for and build the profession of care, and I think that's really, really critical. That's partly where we come from on our journey, I think. So we a very new, very young organisation, and we are structured as a cooperative, and we've taken a slightly different path, I guess, than Be Caring. Yes, we want to put employees absolutely at the heart of the business, because we recognise all those sort of structural issues that mitigate against the delivery of good quality care. There's struggle for good terms and conditions for carers. But we also want to recognise that, I think as many people do, obviously, that the people in receipt of care need to be absolutely central in how things are organised as well, and they're not just sort of passive consumers in the process. So we very much wanted to recognise that as part of our delivery model, and so we've structured ourselves as a sort of multi-stakeholder organisation, and we're sort of working through the implications of that. And my guess is that that's going to take probably a couple of years or so to fully understand and build our governance and management models appropriately to support that. But that's our commitment, and obviously alongside that, we are very much of the view that care is something that needs to be rooted in the community, because we recognise there's a real symbiosis there between the sort of health and well-being of the individual and the health and well-being of the community that they live and work in. So those three sort of pillars really are absolutely vital to our approach. So we're structured in such a way that we have members and investors. Our organisation has been funded largely by members of our own local community, and their investment and their buy-in to the organisation are absolutely critical. It makes us accountable to that community, and it makes us owned and controlled by that community as much as we can be. So that structure and that sort of model of ownership is really, really vital to the way that we see the world and what we're trying to deliver through that. So I think in terms of, if I was to sort of put my hand up and say, right, these are the things that I want to see happen in terms of sort of policy. Yes, absolutely. We need root and branch review in terms of how this sector is actually funded. That underpins everything else. All the sort of nice things that we can say. You can't do anything unless there's sufficient funding in the machine to make that work, and to deliver quality care. I think that I would sort of praise anyone really, from the cooperative sector or from private sector or the public sector, who's out there. Everyone that I come across who's in the care sector is doing their best. They're really trying really hard to deliver good quality services to the people that need that under really quite difficult conditions. So I think that what we're trying to do as a sort of community-based cooperative organisation is really valuable, because I think it shifts the paradigm. It moves, as Sharon was talking about, we need to get away from this sort of traditional concept of time and task and move much more towards a concept where we're delivering services that enable clients to live the life they want to live. So it's has to be driven by them, and it has to be outcome and output based. And you simply cannot deliver that if you're sort of salami slicing your budget and trying to manage things in terms of 15 minutes here and 20 minutes there and a half-hour call over there, and so that needs to change. I think that our model answers a lot of those problems. What we found in our, we've been working through this really for about 3 years now to get to where we are, and what's been perhaps most surprising to me throughout that whole process, and most refreshing to me through that whole process, is that our local authority has been utterly supportive of everything we've tried to do. And in terms of commissioning, which is what their job is really, the system doesn't work for them either in its current model. When you start to look at the sort of conventional structure of social care and how it's commissioned, it doesn't work for anybody at all. Certainly in our locality, the local authority here has been hugely supportive of what we're trying to do, and really want to work with us to try and shift and experiment with different approaches. So we're sort of in a very active dialogue with them about how we might change the game. So that's a key part of it. My sense is that the regulator, because obviously the regulator is very important in this picture as well, is that they seem to be quite open to change and innovation and quite supportive of that. And I think we need to build on that, and as a sector work very actively with the regulator, because if you look at the regulatory framework, it's sort of designed to protect clients from the rigors of the market. If you want, and you boil it right down, that's what it's sort of trying to do, is sort of deliver a safe service, recognizing that the private sector might not always have that at the top of its list, as it were. So what that does it has some unintentional consequences as well, that model. I think it helps to drive down or acts as a downward pressure on pay and conditions for frontline workers, because it demands a certain sort of management hierarchy, which is expensive for smaller organizations to maintain, and it doesn't explicitly sort of recognize innovative sort of self-management models, which is what we're trying to pursue and deliver. So I'd encourage any sort of policy to look at how that innovation with the regulator can be built on. I think those are probably the sort of big policy asks. But what we're really keen to do is talk to more and more people across the sector and learn as we go very actively, and help others to innovate. So part of what we're trying to do is build toolkits and models and structures so that people in other communities who want to do something like what we've done can follow on and learn from our mistakes, and not move much more quickly and more effectively. That's it from me, really.
Thank you, Graham. And it's so good to hear sort of two different models of coming from a similar set of values. I think what is sort of a continuous lesson for me, and I'm sure lots in the sort of wider co-op and social enterprise and third sector world, is that no one size fits all, and that it's important to use that voice to shape services that meet the needs of the communities that you're working with, whether it's the employee communities, the communities of people using a service, families and wider, but equally that there's also no value necessarily in reinventing the wheel, and that as cooperators, being able to learn from each other, to create models that can be replicated and adapted to help grow the sector is in everyone's interest. So I think you two have perfectly demonstrated that in your contribution, so thank you. And any resources, Graham, that you've got that help others seek to do similar in their areas, please feel free to use the Co-op Party to help share them, because I know this is a topic that people are very passionate about, quite rightly too.
And certainly do that.
Good. Last but by no means least, I'm really excited to have Councillor Joanne Harding. I'm a councillor myself, so I know that the social care budget line is a big one and a particularly challenging one, because I don't think anyone gets into local government, at least not sort of in the labour and cooperative end of the world, to sort of have to salami slice. But we're put in a very difficult position in local government, trying to balance lots of different needs and challenges. So if you could talk a bit about sort of how that works in Trafford, some of the ways in which you've been sort of working with communities and staff and others to be able to create something that you think is sort of fairer and delivers good outcomes.
Thanks very much, Anna, and I'm really happy, delighted to join you today. I think one of the things I would pick up on first of all is something that Sharon said really, and she said it's a huge opportunity, and I think that's absolutely right. It's almost like, if not now, when? We've all been, those of us that have been involved across the health and social care sector for many years, have been talking about chronic underfunding, the unsustainability of the models of care, the fragmented care, the way it's delivered, and a workforce that doesn't feel valued and is simply made not to feel valued because of the terms and conditions, the lack of training and investment. So I think Sharon is absolutely right that we have a huge opportunity now, and we mustn't lose that opportunity really. We have to campaign across the labour movement and the cooperative movement to really think about how we can make some significant and sustainable changes. So I guess some of my observations from local government really are this: just how incredible communities have been and have responded to the crisis in social care. We've known for many years that we've very precarious situation around funding the workforce. Here in Trafford, we have quite a big retail sector, and what would invariably happen towards Christmas and other periods of time, we'd have staff that were working in social care leaving the sector to go and work in retail and shopping because they got a bonus or a discount on their clothes, and it meant that, you know, it was just an easier profession to go into than what can be a very, very difficult and challenging profession to work in. So the other thing I've observed really is I've been a councillor for 10 years, and some of the challenges and barriers that are in local government, the bureaucracy is frankly ridiculous at times. And in the space of 2 weeks, we'd set up 6 community hubs. All of those barriers and all of those challenges were removed. And it was incredible to see bold and visionary actions take place, but they were delivered and continue to be delivered, as our 6 hubs still work, by the voluntary and community sector, by smaller groups of people, and by groups of people that want to set up some of the, you know, the things we're talking about today, some of the cooperatives. I think the other thing that I feel really strongly about, we have to move away with social care from the dialogue that it's just about older people. Now, whilst the spotlight has been shone on older people, rightly so, throughout this pandemic, because the protective ring that was spoken about at the beginning simply wasn't there, I have to make a plea that whenever we speak about social care, we speak about it as, you know, my portfolio, for example, covers not only care homes and domiciliary care, but learning disability. And let's remember just how badly impacted the learning disability community have been with this pandemic, but also mental health and substance misuse. And if we think of some of our most vulnerable people living in our communities, how they haven't been able to access the appointments and care that they would have had pre-COVID. So I think one of the things we need to do is shift the dialogue and make sure that we know when we talk about social care that it isn't just about older people, and that when we talk about a care home, it isn't just bricks and mortar that are sitting over there. A care home is where somebody lives. It's part of our community. The way we've spoken about care homes over this past year, it removes that personal touch that, you know, we speak about it as bricks and mortar, and we should be speaking more about the people that live there. The fact that they haven't been able to see loved ones for a year has been absolutely heartbreaking. I was very privilege to chair a commission, co-chair a commission with Northwest ADAS, where we listened to some of the impact that COVID had had on our communities. And honestly, the stories were literally heartbreaking. A couple that was celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary, and she wasn't even able to touch her husband. He had no idea why his wife wasn't able to visit. And I understand that we've had to put those measures in as we've managed COVID. But goodness, as we come through now, we really have to start thinking about how we connect communities better and how we work. We've all been quite lucky in that we're digitally connected. We're all online here today. Not everybody is digitally connected. And I think some of the impact that we're going to see over the next couple of months, where we will have to target some of our social care, is around carers. We've got a community of carers who are tired, they're exhausted, they've not been able to access things like respite daycare for their loved ones. They've been isolated, lonely, not been able to see loved ones, and they've not been digitally connected. So we take for granted a lot of these things. I think the impact on mental health and well-being and loneliness is going to be huge. But I guess the other thing is, we need to think that social care is not for life. We know that social care might just be something that happens at a time when people have a greatest need, but then they don't always need social care. And when we talk about health and social care, we also need to think that not everybody who has a social care need has a health need, and vice versa. So the message, what I want to leave and for us to think about as a cooperative really is, let's think about what this integration of social care gives us. Is it an opportunity? It's also a challenge. I don't want social care subsumed into the clunky bureaucracy of the NHS. I think local government know their communities better. We all know how to work within our communities. The ward I represent, I've lived here for 40 years. I know my neighbours, I know the schools, I know the faith groups. So it's an opportunity for us to really shout about social care, make sure it's a profession to be proud of, that we develop it, that staff feel valued. It's not just about pay, it's about career progression, it's about training and how we invest. So we've got some opportunities, but the key thing that stands out for me, and I'm going to push, I was on a call with the Shadow Front Bench last week. Where is the voice of the citizen? And this is one of the things that I would hope as cooperators in our communities and as the labour movement, whatever changes we make across social care, we genuinely and truly have to make sure we hear the voice of the citizen. We can't build a new model of social care without really listening to what our communities and citizens are telling us. It's the only way we're going to make those changes and make them sustainable when communities and citizens feel listened to. Thank you.
Thank you, and very little to disagree with there, Joanne. We are all about voice at the Cooperative Party, and having a real say and a stake in the things that affect you is at the real heart of what the movement's about and where it comes from. And I'm so glad that you mentioned sort of mental health and well-being, and particularly the impact of this crisis, as we have a question through around how mental health services fit into this discussion about care. Isha says, this year has been so difficult. Care needs to include a bigger focus on both the well-being of staff and customers. So I don't know, Joanne, if I come back to you first, and then Graham, and then Sharon, we'll go backwards. If you've got any comments on sort of mental health and that sort of whole body approach, I guess, Joanne?
Yeah, well, I mean, my career before, well, I've always worked full-time as a counsellor anyway, but my background is in drugs and alcohol and mental health. I managed a mental health crisis service, which was very sadly decommissioned. Yes, we describe mental health as being the Cinderella of services, really, and it comes home to roost sometimes, doesn't it? However, we need to turn that now and start thinking about how we reshape and remodel mental health services. And one of the things that we can do is think about what emotional well-being looks like in our communities. So I'll give an example of what we're planning to do in Trafford, and it might be something that we could look to roll out across other areas, really. So I chair our Suicide Prevention Partnership Board, and what we're wanting to do is equip citizens, residents, organisations to be able to have some of those very difficult conversations. There's a myth that's around that if somebody is saying they're suicidal, that if you talk about it with them, it's likely to make them act. It's not the case. What's more likely to happen is if you say to somebody, how are you, that you're likely to engage with somebody and be able to support them and possibly signpost them. So in Trafford, we're developing 3 tiers of some mental health training and awareness. We want some of the universal access, which is neighbours, residents, friends. There's something, this is a Greater Manchester model of training called Shining a Light on Suicide, and it's a 20-minute module, and it basically just equips people to understand better some of the mental health warning signs. Then we have a middle tier, which is where our social prescribers, our community connectors, our volunteers at the hubs are going to be trained on making every contact count and some of the mind training. And then the third tier will be the mental health first aider. And we've ring-fenced some funding to make sure that people can access this training. But what we want to do is think, well, we don't want that one to be a tick box exercise. And the caveat is that we're not training a whole workforce. We're not expecting citizens to be mental health staff. We're just about raising awareness. Because if we can start some of those low-level interventions where we can just at the very least have a conversation, and we've started a campaign which is How's Your Head? And this came from some of our community saying, well, it just doesn't work if you start using language and jargon. So if you can simply say, we've trained hairdressers and barbers, you know, how's your head? How are you feeling? So what we want to do is start some of that low-level early intervention and then do the transformation work on how we need to invest in some of those services that are more about supporting people who are living with severe and enduring mental health.
Sounds really good. And it's not just about raising awareness, but I guess confidence levels so that people feel like they can make a difference. Graham, did you want to add on mental health at all?
Yeah, really just harking back to what I said earlier about this thing that I feel is really important, that care is something which is embedded within the community, or should be at least, rather than, you know, I think we tend to have a view of sort of a compartmentalized views, like you sort of parachute in a professional to deal with a specific issue or something like that. And I think that we need to take a much more holistic approach, generally, and a more integrated approach, so that, you know, sort of try and join these things up, get rid of this sort of compartmentalized view, which sort of says, well, somebody who's been made redundant as a result of COVID is in a whole different area than somebody who's maybe older, or somebody who's got a mental health need, or somebody who's got a, you know, we're all in the same boat most of the time, struggling with different things or trying to deal with different challenges through our lives. And if we take the view that we're trying to build a community that looks after itself and looks after its people, then we need to take a much more coherent view, and mental health is absolutely you know, a key part of that, because, you know, what we're seeing over the course of this pandemic is, you know, there's a tidal wave coming, isn't there, of mental health that we're going to have to deal with it. And right now, I don't really see government rising to that challenge. Let's hope that that there is a response, because it's going to get fairly hairy otherwise, I think. But yeah, so really just sort of my plea there would be, okay, let's try and think holistically about this, rather than sort of a fractional view of stuff. Yeah.
Thank you. And Sharon, I don't know if you wanted to touch on that, and also from the perspective of your members and staff. It's been a really hard year. You're muted currently, though.
I think somebody touched on it earlier about how tired people are. I think Joanne talked about the carers, and that's the unpaid carers, but actually I think it's the paid carers as well. I just touching on what Joanne said, I think there is a real opportunity here, and I'm coming from my perspective, and I can see this workforce that are underutilised, undervalued, underpaid, and actually with a little bit of investment, we could unleash some capacity to support with these low-level interventions. We spent years training this home care workforce about task and time. You only do what's on the care plan. Well, actually, let's focus on somebody's well-being, somebody's happiness, what's going to make a difference to their lives, and empower this underutilised workforce that's crying out to be paid properly, and really bring that connection together and make a difference in the communities. So I suppose I just want to, linking it back to what I first said really, but I think there's a real opportunity for this amazing workforce to do so much more and support the system. I just would like to add, we are doing a pilot project in one of our services. I've got 60% of the workforce now salaried. We're introducing an approach called 7 Ways to Being Well, which is really focusing on an outcomes-based care plan rather than and I am absolutely confident we can deliver it within the existing financial envelope. So watch this space really, because I do think we can be, what the system is doing at the minute is managing failure. So we need to lift the lid on it. We need to get, almost start from scratch. But I do think there's a huge opportunity to really value the workforce, to allow and empower them to make a difference, to support some of these low-level interventions.
That sounds so exciting. So please do keep us in the loop on the findings and how that goes, because, demonstrating that something works in practice really helps us to persuade others to follow the lead. And I'm glad you talked about the role of carers. June has asked, do you think members of a cooperative are better caregivers, and why? And then there was also a question you mentioned, I think you all touched on sort of the unpaid carers and the tiredness. And Becky says, how do we recognise care by families and friends without institutionalise it? Informal can be squeezed out of formal care, and or people can be left without support, but sometimes those relationships, and we've all used the word relationship a lot, don't exist to give support without sort of sucking something up into an institutional approach. I don't know if it's all right to go backwards. We'll do Sharon, Graham, Joanne, and then Graham, you're going to go first on the last round.
Well, can you just repeat the first question?
Yeah,
again,
it was just,
Anna,
do you think members of your cooperative make better caregivers?
I believe, I think because we're a cooperative, because we are not driven by external shareholders wanting to drive a profit, we can invest in our workforce. And what that's, so it's the little things we do. We give gift vouchers on their birthday, and the difference that's made to some carers who wouldn't normally receive a birthday card, to have that land on their, come through the letterbox with a gift voucher in. We give gift vouchers at Christmas. We've given enhanced holiday entitlements. Because we're not driven. I am almost, I've got the mandate from our members to be their voice, I've developed a partnership with the GMB union, we've developed an ethical care commissioning charter. So what I would say is I think we're attracting, really good carers who want to be part of something that's, championing them as individuals to allow them to deliver better care. Does that make sense? Sorry, I don't know if it was a bit waffly, but I think, yes.
I think, caring is one of those professions that people get into because they genuinely do care. It's not somewhere you go because you want to be a millionaire quick. It's where people go because they are chock full of compassion. So you're absolutely right that you get the most out of that when you treat people well, and give them the fullest opportunity to deliver that care in the best possible way. So thank you. Did you have any comments on informal care, or friends and family and tiredness? You don't have to have a comment on everything, by the way, everyone. I don't want to skip past you if you wanted to add anything.
I just think it's I don't know what the answer is, but I do think it's really important that we recognise, you know, the amount of unpaid care that happens and what impact that, you know, throughout this pandemic that's going to have on people. So I'm sorry I don't have the answers, but just to recognise it is it is important.
Graham, did you want
to thanks. Yeah, and in terms of sort of family and friends and all that sort of informal care, I mean, I think that I've always taken the view that that's like 99% of it actually. It's people around the person who needs care, their family, their social network. That is the vast amount of care that is given, and it, you know, the sort of professional that goes in to deliver the sort of, you know, the care plan or whatever is really quite a tiny, very important, but very, you know, really quite a small part of that. So that's our ethos, is really to try and sort of bring those two things back together. I think there's this process that's been happening over probably decades now is sort of remove this sort of professional element, extracted it, and it. I was talking earlier about, you know, people being parachuted in to deliver this service. And we're trying to sort of rebuild that connection and bring community and care are much closer together through our governance model. And I think that, you know, I feel confident that we can do that. So that sort of family community stuff is absolutely critical in terms of, you know, knitting everything together and building that sense of well-being. In terms of the other point about, you know, if you're in a co-op, are you a better carer? I would say yes. So that echo absolutely what Sharon's been talking about. You know, our job as an organisation managing carers and looking after carers is to enable them to do the best that they can. And that's got to be about investment and support and training, and give them a real sense of respect for their profession. You know, I think we've got a situation at the moment where there's very little respect for the caring profession. Although everyone pays a lot of lip service, you know, deeds speak louder than words, and what we see is a profession that's downtrodden and poorly respected. You know, we need to change that. And I think that, as I said earlier, you know, when I see people who are carers, paid or unpaid, you know, I see people that are doing their best, often in very, very difficult circumstances.
Great, thank you. And Joanne, did you want to come in on those points?
Yeah, I think the first question about whether sort of members make better carers, I'm just going to give a slightly different answer to this really, and think about qualities that go into being carers as such, as part of a paid workforce. I think one of the things I would say is, when I revisit when I said before about thinking about what social care is and the different types of the different range of roles really. So I started off in a needle exchange filling bags of citric. You know, that was me when I first started off as my care profession, and then ended up managing drug and alcohol services and then managing mental health service. So there was real career progression. So I think one of the things we can do is encourage younger people to see social care in a very different way, and to see it as something that, you know, that the qualities are obviously kindness, compassion, but with that you reap the rewards of career progression. You know, obviously if somebody in the health service trains as a nurse, it opens many different doors around promotion, etc. Well, social care can also do that too. So we have to shout loud and proud about a career in social care. And that starts with some of the training academies and voices like mine that can say, this is how I started and this is, you know, what I developed into. I think the unpaid carers, one of the things I would say that we need to do and need to be aware of is the diversity of unpaid carers. So for example, in Trafford, in the north of the borough, we have a large South Asian community where it's just an unspoken thing that you would look after your family and you care for your family. Well, we don't often reach out and think about cultural needs or different language needs. When we've gone out and we've spoken about the community hubs, I think lessons learned are around how we've engaged with our diverse communities, because a lot of unpaid carers will think they don't have the label and they don't want to be.
I keep losing you, Joanne. I don't know whether that's my internet or yours. You're cutting in and out a little bit. But no, I think your point.
It's telling me it's unstable.
Okay, well, if you're really struggling, although we love seeing your face, it can sometimes help to turn your video off. We're towards the end anyway, so I guess, you know, it's good to talk about unpaid carers. I know my mum's found it very hard looking after it. My dad with Parkinson's, it's just very lonely, if nothing else, when you can't see anybody else. I want to mention a few of the other questions, but I'm not sure we're going to have time to do them proper justice. But really exciting one from Mary, said she owns and manages a care home and she wants to retire, but also wants to keep the current staff in their jobs and look after the clients. And I think, you know, that's a really interesting opportunity to transition into cooperative models. I know that the Employee Ownership Association does work around shifting from sort of family-run firms into employee-owned firms and look at different models for that. And if you're north of the border in Scotland, that the CDS is very focused on that as well. So Mary, by all means, get in touch with us, and I'm sure Sharon and Graham would be happy to give some advice and ideas. And then just lots of sort of claps for Joanne's comments on learning disabilities and the treatment of people with learning disabilities through this crisis, and sort of how shocking that's been. And then I guess a quick question from Phil Watson on the social precept on council taxpayers. And I guess it comes back to that issue of funding, where we want more money, but equally it now is the pushing it local means that we're missing out on some of that redistributive, genuine needs-based funding that ought to come centrally, perhaps. I don't know if there were any final views or wrap-up comments that aren't related to any of those questions that anyone wanted to say before I thank you all and wrap the panel up. Should we, Graham, did you want to?
Yeah, just a final comment. I mean, I think that there is a massive opportunity for the cooperative model in social care. I think it adds real value, and I think it's absolutely aligned in terms of, you know, addressing the issues that we see in front of us. So I guess I would just sort of stick my hand up and say, you know, cooperatives are often seen as a sort of very marginal niche product, as it were. But I think that there's a huge opportunity for cooperative models to be the go-to, the default model in this sector.
Thank you. Joanne, did you want to say any final comments?
Just to say, I've been really delighted to take part in this panel because, you know, I really do believe, if not now, when, and we've got this opportunity. And absolutely right what Graham said about some of the smaller cooperative models. It's an opportunity now to really embed in our communities, and it doesn't have to be huge big operators. We can get small community groups doing great things, as we've seen here in Trafford. So positive future, I think, for us to look forward to. Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's been a pleasure having you, Joanne. Thank you. And Sharon, you started us off and I'll let you finish us too. You're on mute though, which has to be said during a Zoom, so you're helping us keep the tradition alive.
Sorry, I just thank you for asking me to take part. It's been a real honour. I just a plea from me to let's champion this amazing workforce, let's value them. And if the co-op can influence policy and our Labour politicians, councils, etc. can do that, let's give them a proper salary, let's pay them a proper wage, train them, you know, develop them. There's a real opportunity to change this now, I think.
Brilliant, thank you. And a call for action for everyone joining us there from Sharon to finish our panel. So thank you so much, Sharon, Graham and Joanne. I'm sure I'll be in your inboxes soon, getting your help on developing our work in this space and trying to make the most of all the amazing cooperators we've got sort of commissioning, using, supporting, involved in the wider care sector. So thank you for your time. And for everyone who isn't Sharon, Graham or Joanne, you are stuck with me again, as I'll be chairing our next panel discussion and the second of our policy topics, which is on high streets and how we can reinvigorate them from the bottom up. So I'm really excited about this topic. I think it's hugely timely. Lots of people tell us that, you know, back to normal after COVID is going to feel like being able to go into your town centre and make the most of the sort of offer that your town centres and high streets have got. And you know, the challenging thing is that some of them won't be very recognisable compared to pre-COVID. We've lost a lot of big retailers. Even before COVID, there were sort of signs of decline in many high streets. But there are communities going against the grain and making sure that this doesn't happen in their place, taking back control, if you like. And to help us talk through this topic, we've got three brilliant speakers. We have Hugh Goulbourne. He is representing the Huddersfield BID COVID-19 Recovery Task Force. Hi, Hugh.
Hi, Anna, how are you?
Hello, all right. We also have Hazel Tilley, who I am so thrilled to welcome back. Hazel joined us at our annual conference in October as well, and was just this absolute star of the show. So watch out, Hugh and Joy, she's going to steal all of your limelight. But Hazel comes to us from Liverpool, Granby Street CLT, which if you haven't encountered with it after listening to Hazel, you're going to be so enthused about the work that they're doing and so keen to replicate it in your own neighbourhoods. And last but by no means least, we have Councillor Joy Allen, who is Cabinet Leader for Transformation in Durham County Council. And Joy recently joined us in a roundtable with the Shadow Chancellor Annalise Dodds, exactly on this topic around how we reinvigorate high streets from the bottom up, and was able to share some really exciting and inspirational examples from Bishop Auckland. So a real stellar lineup. I'm going to do it in the order I've introduced you, if that's all right. So Hugh, then Hazel, then Joy. So I'll hand straight over, Hugh.
Thank you, Anna. And yes, I'm looking forward to this debate today. I join you from Huddersfield in West Yorkshire. I hope everyone can see me properly. I think unusually for West Yorkshire, we've got a lot of sunshine today. So hopefully not too blurred in the background. As you said, my name's Hugh. I am a lawyer based in Huddersfield, commercial and corporate lawyer. I'm also our local co-op party chair for Huddersfield and Colne Valley. And it was great to see Graham Mitchell on your last panel, who's one of our more active and fantastic members in the Colne Valley, talking about co-op care. And I'm a member of his co-op, of his care cooperative. I'm also director of something called Huddersfield Unlimited, which isn't a cooperative, but we are in effect a collaboration between different businesses here in Huddersfield and the university, and we work closely with the council and with the Business Improvement District for Huddersfield on improving our local area and bringing more investment into the area. And I will touch upon that in a bit more detail as we go through this presentation. And so, as you've said, yeah, I am here to talk, I suppose, principally about some of the stuff we've been working on alongside the Business Improvement District in terms of how to bring Huddersfield back to life. And you're absolutely right, I think, Anna, in your introduction to say this is a very, I suppose, interesting time. I think it's a moment of opportunity, and I see it as really a cooperative moment. You know, the pandemic, and I think this has been brought up from the presentations I've seen throughout this afternoon, has brought people together. Probably has not as never before, but in a way that we probably haven't seen for a generation. That doesn't mean that we haven't got challenges, I suppose. You know, I think we've seen wealth being transferred into the hands of a very few people at quite an alarming rate during the last 18 months, during the last 12 months. You know, our economy is a bit crippled, and you know, I think this is a timely time to be talking, because next week we are going to hear from the Chancellor, or this coming week, about the scale of the effect that is going to have on our economy and our local public services. So I think it's worth having that in the back of our minds. And I think if we're going to see a fairer and more safe community emerging in places like where I am here in Huddersfield, then we're going to need self-help and mutual assurance on an unprecedented scale in terms of our local high street and our town centre. And I was looking back, I suppose, just before we came online at our you know, the very heritage of our movement, and you know, reminding myself that the Rochdale Pioneers set up their first cooperative really as an alternative to poor quality and unadulterated food. And I see that as a supply and a demand problem. And I think this ought to be an inspiration for us now when we talk about our high streets, because that's a problem I can see presenting itself already, and will present itself more in terms of whether we look at supermarkets or the warehousing of products with Amazon and others. Already I think we've seen, if anyone's tried to book an online delivery from a supermarket, already we're seeing a reduction in opportunity and choice and access. And I think a lot of the promise of the future is about places like Amazon reducing opportunity and choice. So really, I think we're coming back to that moment, that cooperative moment, where really we do need that self-help model. But before I go into that in a bit more detail, I think I was asked today to talk a little bit about the context and the challenges, both pre-COVID, as you said, and now coming out of COVID. Why our high streets are so important in terms of placemaking, and the role of co-ops and communities and local authorities together. So I guess touching on each of those, the first thing is the challenges. I think Huddersfield isn't alone in terms of any of our Pennine towns and across West Yorkshire, or Yorkshire, the north of England, and across the UK in terms of some of the macroeconomics. So competition online, as I've touched upon, for our town centre, and even before that, competition from out of town and supermarkets and other things that have led to decline in terms of footfall into our town centre and onto our high streets. For us here in Huddersfield, we've got increasing centralisation, I suppose, in terms of the economy into Leeds, which has drawn a lot of footfall out of our town centre and into Leeds centre, as jobs have moved increasingly into that economy. Declining income as a town, we're a manufacturing town, and if we go back 30, 40 years, we had many more jobs with much higher income. So declining income, and of course less expenditure on public services as well. Our council is still our second biggest employer in the area, and so decline in budgets for the council is going to lead to a knock-on effect in our town centre. And also the car, we have the opportunity to get in our cars and drive anywhere within half an hour, and so I think that has also led to increasing footfall, drifting away from our high street and our town centre. And what's changed in the last 12 months? Well, I suppose some of those problems have become worse, more inequalities, as we know. So, I think we could expect to see in Huddersfield further declining in income as we come out of the current pandemic, and a worsening economic situation. The shift online even further. I've talked about obviously now more online supermarkets, but also a lot of us are ordering things since we're working from home, and there's been a lot written in the press about that shift online into Amazon and other forms of purchasing. And will we go back onto the high streets once we come out of the pandemic? Well, I think a lot of our behaviours have perhaps changed in that respect. Our group worries a little bit about car use. At the moment, obviously in lockdown, we haven't seen as much mobility, as people haven't had to go into offices and other things, but increasingly people have been using their cars because it's seen as a safe, self-isolating mode of transport. And so I think we need to think a little bit about that. Are we going to see even more increased use of cars away from public transport for those who can afford to do that, and will that lead to further decline in our high streets? I say all of that because I think there are increasing challenges to some extent, but I don't think it's all bad. I think what we are also seeing is that move away from centralisation. So previously, as I described it, centralisation into the major hubs, and here in Huddersfield, we look as much west to Manchester as we do to Leeds. Well, we know some of that isn't happening as much, so perhaps there are more opportunities, and already we've seen more opportunities when we talk to members of ours in the town centre who offer office space. There is more demand for office space now in Huddersfield town centre that we haven't seen for the last decade, as big corporate organisations look to dismantle their workforces in Leeds and Manchester, and to perhaps move them nearer to people's homes in and around this part of West Yorkshire. So there's an opportunity. And as I talked about before, that kind of supply and demand side problems online, I think we're starting to see that some of the issues associated with having to order things online and see them distributed to people's homes. And I think that again presents an opportunity for our high street. In terms of the placemaking element of high streets and town centres, one of the things we've looked at a lot in terms of our business improvement district task force, which is made up of mostly local businesses actually, and then representatives from our local authority, we've talked a lot about the need for social spaces, both over the last 12 months, and it's been difficult at times to do that because of the uncertainty around when we can open and reopen things. But certainly going forward in the next 3 or 4 months, looking at the government's timeline and timetable, there's definitely going to be an opportunity, I think, around May to have social spaces that are outdoors, where people can come back into the town centre and still be isolating socially from one another, but at least be in a space where they can meet friends and do other things safely. And so that's a real opportunity, I think, for town centres now, like ours, in the next 6 months and maybe even longer. You know, I'm a lawyer who's worked from home for a long time, even before this pandemic. But that need for business interaction and for innovation and creativity, you know, you can't really replicate the experience you get when you all get together in a space. And as I say, I think a town centre like ours, which is well located on a train line, equidistant between Leeds and Manchester, and we're not the only one, you know, Murfield, Halifax, all of those towns also have the same sort of opportunity, Brighouse as well. You know, here's an opportunity to get some more jobs and office space into our town centre. And, you know, experience, I think lots of us want to be able to go back to the theatre, go to cinemas, etc. And what an opportunity for towns to be the place where people go and do that. So I think in terms of placemaking, it's absolutely essential that we have vibrant spaces where we can all come together. And I think this pandemic has shown that, you know, we are, well, better together. And so we do need these town centres that are vibrant, that have spaces where we can come together, albeit safely, and have a mix of experience, of workplace, of outside space, high quality outdoor space that we can all go into. And I think that leads me into the next point around sort of collaboration. As I say, our task force is made up of the Business Improvement District, representatives from local businesses, many from the retail sector, also from the hospitality sector, but also from the local authority. And I think we've seen over the last 12 months that there is a real opportunity for us to work better if we work in collaboration. And, you know, the Business Improvement Districts, I think, are a really good example of almost modern new cooperation. And you know, they are collaborations, they are self-help models, mostly run by businesses in town centres who want to help their town centres become more vibrant. And this process has enabled us to work much more effectively, I think, with local authorities, because there's just been that need to perhaps dismantle some of the barriers that we might have had before, institutional barriers, and just get on and do things. And I think the next 6 months will give an even greater imperative to that and enable that kind of collaboration and cooperative working. I think there's 2 other elements in addition to local authorities. Clearly, they're a very important actor in the space, but also community groups. We have some fantastic, particularly online groups on Facebook and others here in Huddersfield who do some brilliant work in terms of showcasing the best things that are happening, and then also at some stage, you know, putting new ideas out there around things that could be done in the town. And one of the things I'm really interested in seeing whether we can do here, and some of us have suggested to the local authorities to set up a citizens' assembly so that we can really enable citizens to have a greater say in the new strategic plan and blueprint that the council has for our town centre. And then I think the final thing is cooperatives. You know, I mentioned before, but I see this as an opportunity for 2 sets of mutual enterprise that we're looking to pilot here in Huddersfield, and perhaps in partnership with the Business Improvement District in Brighouse. The first one is in relation to that kind of outdoor space that I was talking about. You know, in a town centre like Huddersfield, we don't necessarily have the natural space for something like that, but we do have lots of disused space. And one of the things we're looking at as a business improvement district and talking to the council about is opening a shared space where different businesses can come in, from an outdoor cinema to an outdoor bar and a coffee shop, and we can create that really safe space so that even in sort of April and May, as we unlock gradually, there is a place where people can come back into the town centre and reclaim it and feel safe being there, people of all different age groups and types. And so I'd see that as a cooperative venture, really. It's going to be something that the platform will be provided as a partnership between the local authority and the bid. But all of the businesses who come in there will be cooperating with each other and having to help contribute equally to making that space work. And then I think there's something even more adventurous that we can do that we're looking at. which is to look at how, in effect, we make the town centres compete and replicate the model that is so successful for people like Amazon and others. You know, we have in effect a warehouse there in the town centre full of lots of different goods and services. It's better located. You know, Amazon has that problem around how do you get something to somebody on the same day? Well, unless you're willing to pay a huge premium, you're unlikely to get it much more than 3 days after you've ordered it. Guess what? A lot of those products are in a town centre and can get to you even on the same day if you order them online. And we've got models that we're looking at around logistically how we can ensure that that happens and happens in an environmentally friendly way. The key to this, though, is having a platform that is shared by all the businesses in the town centre. And what greater model of cooperation is there than that, where you've got a platform, a digital platform, where everyone contributes in equal measure and has an opportunity then to sell on that platform to anyone in the local area. And so that's a model we're looking at piloting over the next few months. We're already into the development stage of that digital architecture. And importantly, we're working with an e-commerce business that knows exactly how to use a lot of the social media and other online skills that an Amazon does to ensure that lots of people in the local area can see that platform and recognize it. So that I think paints perhaps a more hopeful picture. I'm going to end there, but just, you know, by coming back to this point, I think this is a moment of opportunity for cooperation. Crises such as the pandemic, you know, have always spurred social and economic movements. You know, as I say, I was looking back at, you know, if we look back at World War II and the social reforms that came out of that, but even if we look at the birth of our own current modern cooperatives, you know, that came immediately after the Napoleonic Wars and in the early 19th century, and that period of economic and social disruption. But I think to do this, and I did hear some of the end of the last session, we do need to be really ambitious as a movement. And, you know, I'd start by saying one of the things I think we should be looking at is business improvement districts. I think are a natural vehicle for cooperation. They are what I think of as being cooperatives, in effect. Most of them are not set up as industrial and provident societies. And one of my challenges, I think, to our movement and also to the councils and the councillors who are on this call is, why not? Why shouldn't we be saying to the business improvement districts, you should be set up as industrial and provident societies? Because then they would become natural harbours and places where local businesses could hear about what cooperation is, and what better way to spread the principles and values of cooperation than having a local institution that is a mutual. We're going to end there. I'm really looking forward to the rest of the debate, Anna, and I hope that's been a useful contribution.
I was going to say, I think there are some questions coming in on the chat about bids, so I wouldn't want you to preempt them in your preamble. Thank you very much, Hugh. I'm going to hand over to Hazel to talk about Granby Street CLT. Thank you so much for joining us, Hazel. And I'm going to need you to unmute first. Lovely. Yep. There we go.
I think I've unmuted. Thank you. Well, you gave me such a wonderful introduction that I'm afraid now I won't live up to it. But because it's Zoom, I've put on my best perfume because there's nothing I can do about my face. All right. Hugh, that was great. And the conversation before about care and carers was also fantastic. Right, I'm from Granby, which is inner city Liverpool. We're about 1.5 miles from the docks. We are a multicultural, multiracial area, and I think that brings with it labels from various people of being multi-problematic, which I can assure you we are not. We just ask a lot of questions. So the CLT has been formed for about 10 years. I'm getting old now, so time sort of compresses in an odd way. So for 10, read anything from 8 to 12. But well before we formed the Community Land Trust, we started a little street market. And that street market has grown. COVID has put a stop to it for now, but we are definitely going to be restarting around about July, I would think, for the first Saturday in July. And our street market is run entirely by volunteers. And we now work hand in hand with the council, but we originally started the street market up because we could, because the streets were empty and devoid of people living with them. The council had absolutely not only taken no notice of us, they had de-invested in the area heavily. And so we basically became anarchists and ripped up paving stones and planted trees. And then we started a little market, and it was started by local people, Kevin and Gina, who live in Cairn Street, which is where I live. And Kevin does house clearances. And he said, "Do you think I could put a stall up here and just see if I can sell anything?" And we said yes. And then somebody else in the street said, "I'll make teas and coffees." So I was asked if I would make some of my ginger cake. And somebody else said, "Oh, I've got lots of secondhand clothes and stuff." And within a matter of a couple of hours, that market had about 8 stalls and a few visitors, and it was a sunny day and we had a great time, and it grew from there until now we have 70 odd stalls. I'm a firm believer in localism, and the question is about how we reinvigorate or bring back to life, as Hugh said, our high streets. I think really we need to define what a high street is. And is it your city centre major shopping street? Is it a local street? So I'm really not sure, but I have ideas for local streets, and I think local streets need to be run by local people, and they need to be full of local businesses and local interests. Right, but they also need to sell what people need. And we know that people need food, and people need clothing, and people need things to put into their houses, and people need beauty. So I think that we have to invigorate our high streets and make them beautiful with plants, with art, with good graffiti. And it's debatable what good is, because my taste isn't your taste. But I would say at least make it interesting and pertinent. We don't want any more, just tags. I think that a tag attached to a fantastic picture, even if I don't like the picture, is a great thing. But I think we need to truly make our public spaces public, because we don't make them public. We miss out so many people. I don't know many of my Muslim neighbours who go shopping in Waitrose or Lewis's or the big stores. They tend to go to small local stores that meet their need, and also small local stores that sell the clothing that they want. And by the way, the full length garments that Muslim women wear really translate well to wheelchair users. So just to merge the two things about care and ability. So, and the other thing is, talking about people who use wheelchairs, we need to make sure that things are accessible in as much as people can get in. So that is your person with a Zimmer frame, your lady with a child, a toddler and a pram, your person in a wheelchair. So if you can make every access wheelchair friendly, you're actually making things accessible for almost everybody, including the ones who can climb stairs and open gates. But there are many people who find stairs difficult. And so that's, how many women become pregnant, how many women have children, how many women are dragging around shopping, push chairs, toddlers, and actually a ramp's a really good idea. So let's look at those things. And I think that they're not easy, but they're not difficult if you just, because I'm a believer in localism, I think you can't look at a big picture. I think you look at the nearest thing and think, what can I do with that? So my ideas for your local high street are really keep it local. My ideas for the big city centres is that I think by and large, we just have to rethink them totally, because why? I like Hugh's idea of working from the Amazon model and saying the big city centres have everything, or the big town centres have everything that everybody needs. And you're right, you go on to, I don't want to advertise anybody, but you go on to Argos and they'll do you a same day delivery, or you can click and collect. And I think click and collect is quite popular. I think we need to make all of our main shopping areas car free. We need to look at what we're doing by encouraging cars and making car parks, and, saying that cars can go everywhere. No, they can't. People come before vehicles. So we do need to look at ways of moving people around that are, as everybody knows, we're in COVID, that need to be COVID friendly. And the electric car doesn't necessarily cut it with me. But then that, again, that's you know, a personal thing. I think that there's a lot of destruction goes in the creation of one electric car and the batteries that are required, etc., etc. But I would like to see some of the big shops actually that are, because we know that big companies are going down. We know that city centres are full of glass fronted shops. And being a dreamer, in my dreams, I see these glass fronted shops full of greenery. Right. I think that we have the makings of some astonishing city centre greenhouses and indoor gardens and so on and so forth. I think that we could look at, there's loads and loads of compact housing now. And I think that we should start to be building in our big centres. I think we should be start knocking out, you know, in the big empty shops. I think we need to start knocking out floors, bringing the light in, making gardens, and in those beautiful environments putting small compact homes. And you know, they can be built from all sorts of things. I think we should be looking at all sorts of material to be doing our building with, and looking at how we recycle, because God knows there's so much goods traveling around the world that there's an awful lot of containers now that are just sitting empty, rusting, being dumped. You know, why aren't we looking at these for building modular homes? Why aren't we seeing what's already available? I also think that, back to Granby and the market, that market streets, if you keep the price of your stall low, and we keep the prices of our stalls really low, between £10 and £12 a stall, right? So that's for a day. And that means that somebody local can pick their pet hobby or what they're really good at. If they're a really good craft person, if they're really good baking, they can book a stall. They can see whether or not there's a viability for a growing business, and then help needs to be provided if that person wants somewhere. So in Granby, we are looking at the empty shops. We are looking at how we can revive those shops, and we're certainly looking at how we can encourage local businesses. And by local businesses, I mean people who live in the area, to set up their business. We have bakers, we have sewers, we have knitters, we have gardeners, we have painters, we have decorators, we have carpenters, anything you can think of, weavers, roofers, you name it. It is all within the area. People have skills, and how do we involve those people with those skills that they already have? How do we build on them? How do we help them to make their own businesses? And I love the word cooperative. It's fantastic. The more cooperation we have, the more groups that work together, the more knowledge is shared, then the bigger that group is, then the more power it has. And there is power in unity, there is power in cooperation, and we have to use that. And I think I've probably talked for long enough. So I'm happy for questions.
Thank you. And
Thanks.
I love the idea of filling the town centres with greenhouses. That would be wonderful.
Well, food, flowers,
food
an
and
opportunity,
flowers.
everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really interesting. That ties in so well with the speech given by Annalise Dodds recently, looking at sort of the power to take back empty shops for councils, and how we can empower communities to, even if it's a meanwhile thing, turn them into something beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm going to come on to questions for you all together at the end, Hazel. So if you don't mind pausing and keeping your mind brimming with ideas, I will invite Joy, or have you got to disappear?
Yeah. I might have to disappear. I'm actually doing this in my lunch break, which I've moved.
Oh, goodness.
Right. So I might have to disappear.
Let me just have a quick look at what question. We do actually have a Liverpool question. I don't know if you, maybe I'll direct that to you. It's about Knowsley Council took the interesting step of buying Kirkby Town Centre to redevelop, but what lessons can they learn about how to make that successful?
I think they need to listen to what Hugh is saying, because he gave some really good pointers for doing that. I think they need to build up a skills register, people who've got local skills and who need a selling place. And I think they need to look at a gardening group and a tidying up group, because if you're going to take responsibility, you take responsibility not just for the buildings, but for the space around them. And I think they need to talk to each other and see what ideas are already there.
Brilliant. And I think they need to put you in charge, clearly.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. And you drop out whenever you need to, Hazel. We're really grateful that you're able to join us.
I'd like to listen to Joy before I drop out.
I will hand over to Joy then. Joy, thank you.
you.
And it's lovely to see you again in a short period of time. Thanks for joining.
And thanks for having me. It's been fascinating already. I've loved Hazel's experience of markets, because I'm going to touch on markets a little bit on my intro as well. Obviously, I'm the Cabinet Member for Transformation, Culture and Tourism. I'm also Bishop Auckland Mayor, and I'm the Labour and Co-operative candidate for PCC elections, Peace and Crime Commissioner elections, this coming May. So it's great to be with collaborators and cooperatives this morning. Just a little bit about Bishop Auckland. It's, for those that don't know, it's 12 miles southwest of Durham. It's a small town with a big history and big ambitions. Most recently, its new history was started with the proposed sale of the Bishop's Palace by the Church Commissioners, and also these famous Spanish paintings called the Zuberums. And they were bought by a hedge fund manager called Jonathan Ruffer, who thankfully for the benefit of the town is also a philanthropist, and he wanted to inject £100 million into the town. So this is going back for 2013. He wanted to transform the castle that was once a private palace into an internationally significant destination that will bring visitors from across the UK and abroad, reinvigorating the town centre and increasing opportunities for the local community and also jobs. I think it would really important. Bishop Auckland has seen many changes, but it's currently undergoing major developments. And it was to be our year last year before COVID, because everything had been closed for refurbishment and design. They spent £18 million on the castle, and we spent 1.5 million on the town hall, and it was just about to be opened when we had COVID. So it's a town on the cusp at the moment. So with Jonathan, with his investment, he brought, let's say, the £100 million. We've already had a mining art gallery, which is really important, because it's the Pitman paintings, and it brings that local, you know, as an attraction. It brings the culture from across the County Durham and the coalfields and wider, actually into the heart of the town, into a designated mining art museum. We've got a tower, which is a fantastic viewing platform. We've got the castle that I mentioned, and this year we'll see a Spanish art gallery, which has been internationally linked to the Prado in Spain, and also we've got the walled garden. In addition to that, we found out on Boxing Day, which was a very strange time to find out a big announcement from the government, that we'd secured £19.9 million for the Future High Streets Fund, and we're currently bidding for 46.6 million through the Stronger Towns Fund. As I say, it's a history. The history is a market town, and as Hazel quite rightly said, I was as a politician, I'm knocking doors in 2013, and everybody wanted a market. They wanted a big market. They wanted it brought back. And I have to say, I've spent my probably 7 years trying to give them a market. And if you can have a market, but if people don't come to it, it's challenging. However, I've never stopped trying to give them the market that they want. And it's every iteration that we've done on the markets, it's been a benefit. So the market that we've done, we ended up with a Christmas market that ended to be annual. Then another market, we've got the traders, when the market closed, then there were 7 of them took up empty vacant premises in a district, like an area of a high street, and then now, although it's sort of cooperatives and collaborators and everything, but you know, the formal signing of a declaration and the paperwork really, and they've set up something called the Future of for Bongate, and that business is really the energy and the enthusiasm of those traders supporting each other, and they're not sort of they really want everybody to do very well. We introduced a moon market. Now the moon market is a nighttime monthly food and drink market with singers sort of turning up and doing certain sets. Very, very popular. It's in the outdoors, and it was surprised everybody that it became more popular than the one in Durham City, because it was something different. And I think what we found, Bishop Auckland's also known for its food festival. People love to eat and drink and socialise, and I think the Moon Markets brought that. And the trader, the market trader, brought these organisations together. And again, thankfully, coming to Bishop Auckland, they've set up, some of them have actually set up businesses in the town, as well as still continuing their work on the market side. Another, which is a quite astonishing achievement within Bishop Auckland, it's getting a reputation for its volunteering and its collaboration and working together. Probably is one of the biggest things that we've got. If anybody's heard of Kinran, this is a nighttime show that's an outdoor show, and it came from France. It's a Puy de Fou, and it's the same sort of thing, but in Bishop Auckland, which again is a small town. After Bishop Auckland, it was going to China and Russia. So being a local councillor, I had to overcome objections. And you're like, oh my God, you're getting this as a massive, massive show for the town. But obviously it's not everybody's cup of tea, and there's local residents, and there's noise issues, there's big firework displays. So we had to overcome the planning permission and then obviously licensing for noise, but we did it. And the big thing, we said we have to recruit 1,000 volunteers who didn't have any acting experience or any sort of theatrical experience at all. And you think, no way on earth are you going to get 1,000 people coming forward to get dressed up as a Roman or as as Queen Victoria and do this all every night, sort of over the summer on a weekend. But that is also in the training. They've done that, and they've done that since 2016, and they've performed their nighttime show to over 250,000 people. And I have to say that sometimes towns are ready because they see the decline and they really want the town to do really well, and they want to get behind something that's trying to make the town do really well. And I think something like the Kinran show, it brought all the town together. It brought children from 5-year-old to 90-year-old working intergenerational on a show, and the fun that they had was amazing. And I have to say, it wasn't anything that Jonathan Ruffer did or Kinran did. There was something collectively, these people coming together with that passion for the town, that their friendships have maintained when the show's not on. They meet for a cuppa and a catch-up. When they meet for a cuppa and a catch-up, they raise money for charity. They put money in for charity. They also used to go from the shows on a night time, and they would have a social. So even at 11 o'clock, they would all meet together and think, have not seen enough of each other. But I was also a Kinran volunteer for 2 years, and it was fantastic. We've also got something called the town team. And again, that was about how do we bring football into the town? This is all volunteers, this is all collaborators working to bring something into the town for the good of the town. We've recently, I chair the town ambassadors, and the town ambassadors is there to point people to where things are within the town. Again, as a local councillor, I got really frustrated when they say the town's dead, there's nobody in it, there's no businesses, it's like a ghost, and you think, this is not the same town that I'm seeing. This is not, there's cars everywhere. Where's everybody at if nobody's in the shops? And also, there's some fantastic businesses, and I think we're doing them a disfavour if we don't promote them. So we've just recently launched a website, it's bishopauckland.org.uk, and that promotes the over 300 businesses in the town. We promote what's on, where to go, where to eat. Again, we did that because if you look at the generic Facebook pages, if you put Bishop Auckland in, you'll go to Crook, you could go to other areas outside of Bishop Auckland, and this is all about the people of Bishop Auckland. The other thing that we've done in the town, again, it brings people together. Everybody has different passions. One of the things that makes a high street look good is bloom. And that's what we did for Bishop Auckland, and we've done it for 4 years. And last year, 2019, We won the largest town category in the Northumbria in Bloom, and that was the town looks magnificent, and people, when they visit in the town, they see that, they feel like somebody loves the town and they're doing these things. This group also wanted to do something quite differently for a roundabout, and they've raised £25,000 and also secured other money, and they're getting a sculpture on a large roundabout, so it's about £75,000. And this is local people have done this with the support of the businesses community, and it's a miner and a bishop, so it's called the Bishop's Marrow Roundabout. And this is sort of locally, like you were talking about, organic, bottom up. The community didn't want to be all about Jonathan Ruffer with his £100 million. This is about the community, the volunteering and the work that we're doing is about the community. I mentioned about the high streets. The big thing that for me, again, from a council point of view of what we need, we've got some fantastic small shops, which are great for somebody who's working from the marketplace onto the high street. So it's a little bit of a step up from the market stall to the first shop. But then you've got those, and then you've got very large shops. And I think you haven't got the medium and smaller in between. So it's very difficult for our businesses that I mentioned in Bongate to expand because it's not affordable. So if they can't move, we can't get new businesses in and we can't grow. So hopefully through the Future High Streets Fund, we're looking at those things to bring in different things. We need more hotels. We know that for the local economy, we need overnight stays. And if we don't have overnight stays, we're losing hundreds of pounds per person. So that's another big thing that both those funds will look to regenerate the area. And I think finally, from my side, I think it's the passion of the people. And we've talked about what we do, and I feel we've talked about this today. There's so many cooperatives, but they haven't got the badge, or maybe they don't know about it, or how do we bring them in? And because they're doing all these wonderful things, and I think having the opportunity to engage with other people in other areas, like Hazel and Hugh, to find out how we can work better together. I do feel like COVID has brought an opportunity to us. We saw our high street. We've got one of these free digital hi-fi stuff, so we know footfall, so we know how the footfall's changing, and we got 50,000 when there was nothing open in July and August that were coming into the town. So this is without anything closed. The cafes and the restaurants were full, and I'm thinking, how are we going to cope with visitors if all of our local people don't want to go wider anymore? They don't want to go to the out of town because it feels a little bit unsafe, or a little bit I'm staying local. So I think for us, when we're talking about the future of our high street, this is a massive opportunity post-COVID to keep those people who want to stay local, but promote what is local.
Brilliant, thank you, Joy. And although you're saying there's not room for us, I know Bishop Auckland's up on my list of staycation destinations once we're allowed this summer, and you've sold it to me. And we don't have time to go into all of the questions. I'm going to do one. Colleagues will be virtually sending me evil eyes, but we've heard from Hazel that in empty shops she put greenhouses and grow food and flowers. Paul Harmon has mentioned that the M&S in his area is now a community-run art centre. So in sort of one sentence only, what if you've got empty shops in your area and you could put anything in it you wanted, what would it be? Hazel, are you sticking with your greenhouse answer?
Yeah, because I think what you put into empty spaces is people,
yeah,
things to attract them. So yes.
Right, lovely. Greenhouses. Joy, what?
I think I would just have the food and beverage, because we can't get enough of it in Bishop Auckland, and people like to socialise. Space to socialise, love it. Right, Hugh, they've taken two very good answers. So coming last, you've got the biggest challenge.
They have. And I like all those ideas, and I also like the idea of putting housing in that Hazel had before. But I think mine would be, and this is something we are looking at actually in Huddersfield, is workspaces. You know, as I've referenced, Huddersfield's getting at the moment, and it might be the same for Joy where she is in Bishop Auckland, we're getting a lot of interest from people who want second offices closer to their workforce, you know, who were previously in Leeds and Manchester. And there are people now, I think, who are using those sorts of spaces. We're talking to one business doing some very interesting stuff around that. You know, you can put up very cheaply pop-up workspaces where people can go in, get their laptop out, have a coffee and do some work and collaborate with others. So I think that would be mine.
Lovely, I love it. This sounds like the kind of high street I want to spend time on, so I'll leave you all to it and then I'll come and visit once I'm allowed. Thank you so much, Hugh, Joy and Hazel. I'll send you a note with some of the comments and questions we got through the session as well, because I think you'll find them interesting. And I know that, you know, if there's further information from all three of you, we'll do our best to share it to our members so they're able to be as supportive and engaged as possible. I am going to call it a day for our live stream session. This has been broadcast to 3 different regions: North West, North East and Yorks and Humber. Now you've got an opportunity to meet and network and discuss with people in your own region. You should have received the Zoom links for those already, but if you're stuck at all, on our party website from the front page, you should be able to click through and find it really easily. You've got a short break, so make yourself a cup of tea, and then at 4:15, join in with your regional Zoom. I'll be seeing some of you on one of those, and other colleagues will be joining and supporting on others. So do get involved and stay involved. A big thank you to Hugh, Joy and Hazel and all of our speakers this morning. It's been a real fantastic session, really invigorating and good to hear the good stuff that's happening in all our communities. So thank you very much, and bye for now.
Bye.